All right, all right, all right. Okay, we're on the road. Full transparency.
Full
I don't
transparency.
know if any of this is gonna work. I don't know if y'all can hear us, see us, something. We'll figure it out. When this episode is over, and we're at a conference, so our time is very limited. But we're here anyway. Okay, look, let's jump right into it. So we all have expectations for ourselves, right? But have we ever considered how these self expectations just kind of shape our self worth and our sense of self esteem? They are two different things, which we'll talk about. Our standards and goals have a direct influence on how we view ourselves and our place in the world. So understanding the connection between these two things is super, super key. Um, because we have to develop a healthy self image and maintain good mental health, which you know we're all about around here, which we'll talk more about later. But listen, whether you're in a place where you're struggling with self doubt or you just want to boost your self esteem, wherever you're at, okay, we got you, we with you. You should stick around. This episode is for you. If the thing would come on.
Hi, I'm Pam Williams, a mother.
And I'm Jessica E. Williams, a daughter. And this is a mother and a daughter truthful chat, where we discuss our 35-year multi-layered relationship.
We've been through so many ups and downs. Not only are we family, but we're business partners in the high-stress world of event planning and production for short films.
We've also shared the same therapist for over 10 years. What some people call codependence, we call collaboration.
So join us as we share stories from our lives,
Have candid conversations with other mother-daughter duos,
and shed light on the roller coaster ride of being a woman while raising a woman.
All right, folks. I think that ended abruptly. That was not my intention. Uh, forgive me. But anywho, welcome to Truthful Chats. Okay, we on the road. We doing new things. Please
Test,
bear
test,
with
test,
us.
as they say.
Testing, all the things. So welcome to Truthful Chats. This is designed to engage us in the ongoing practice of creating generational wellness. If you're new here, if this show 91st episode with us, thank you for being here. We don't have any mugs in all of the haste of what we're doing. So let's clink an air mug. Up to you. We're
We get our
drinking
Chick-fil-A back.
holy water. Anyway, create generational wellness. If you've never heard that term before, there's a reason for that. It's because we created it. So somewhere around here, there's a description of that. You can check it out. Truthful Chats is the name of the weekly podcast that we do here. So I create generational wellness. We usually have a theme of the month. The Truthful Chat is where we unpack the theme. Okay. The theme for September is expectation. We've been talking about that all month. We will not leave from that topic um, until October. And if you clicked on this video, then you know that today's chat is expectation. Shape your self worth and your self esteem.
So how we got to this topic is we told you we're at a conference and we are visiting with my niece, Jessica's cousin,
Doctor,
the esteemed Dr. Edner, and we were,
who's been on the show before. So
yeah.
check out the February episodes and some other things.
So we were talking about how expectations, we've been talking about expectations all month, as you know. And so we were telling her about that. And we said, what do you think? What's something that um, expectations, how did they relate in your life? And she said something very interesting. She said the expectations affected her self-worth. And we were like, that's interesting. Say more. And, you know, the more we talked about it and whatever, we discovered there's a really important connection between self expectations and self worth. So, just in case you don't know, self expectations are personal
We're very
beliefs,
sleep deprived, so just know that.
personal beliefs about what we should do and think or feel. And so these expectations guide your behavior. They're based on your values. They can be based on past experience, what other people have said to you, all the things in your life somehow come together and they form your self expectations, what you expect of yourself. So the thing is, when you set reasonable explanations for yourself,
Expectations.
yeah, reasonable did I say
You
explanations?
did say
Child. Child, as Sarah Jakes Roberts would say.
Shout out to the delegation.
Which, yes.
We're loving when we evolve. We
We're-
are the first session and we try and get to the next
And
session.
yes, we have another session.
But we're here. Okay.
All right.
We're committed.
So when we set reasonable expectations for ourselves, it can lead to healthy and self-esteem. We feel good about ourselves. However, when we set unrealistic expectations, it can negatively affect how we view ourselves, how we interact with other people. If we start falling short of meeting our own expectations, it leads us to self-doubt, to disappointment, anxiety, depression, even. And then it also impacts how we interact with others because we know what we think about ourselves, and it seeps out. You may think you are hiding it, but you're not. It's
We can
gonna
see
come
it.
out. We can see it. So the self-worth theory suggests that your our main priority in life is to find self-acceptance, often sometimes through achievements, which
Achievement and accomplishment. Shame.
accomplishments, yes. And so that is not always the best way, because it's important to remember that our worth isn't solely determined by our achievements or how we measure up to others. Um, so we can help diminish that, cultivating. We when we compare ourselves to other people like that, and we're worried about it, and it's the constant thing that's playing in our head, what other people expect of us, that then turn into what we expect of ourselves, then sometimes you got to get to the place where you have unconditional self acceptance, because otherwise, all that is going to affect how you feel about yourself, your self worth. And then, if it's always just tied to self external factors, what's going on around you, what people say about you, what it looks like on Instagram, if it's always just based, if your work is based
outside of you,
that, then you're going to have some challenges, because true self acceptance means embracing all of you, the flaws, whatever's not right, whatever you think could be better. Yes, it probably could, but that's no reason to be doubtful of who you are as a person. We just heard something about that this morning. Who are you? Talk to yourself with the same kindness you would offer a loved one. If somebody else was talking down to themselves and hard on themselves,
you would want to fight them.
You would want to fight them.
Be
You
your
would want to
friend.
encourage them.
Be your
If
friend
they were
on behalf of
talking
you.
about your friend, you would want to
You
fight
would be
them.
ready to not give you bucks. So treat your negative version of yourself like
Like
that. Like that's the bully, and we gotta handle it.
We
Okay.
got to handle it. All right. We got to define your personal values. We talk about that a lot around here. You can go back, you can look at some episodes, but this is another important part of nurturing your self worth. Because if you're clear about who you are, who you want to be, what's important to you, what your values are, then
You can't get knocked off your square as easily.
it's not going to matter to you as much.
You're not gonna get knocked off.
May not matter to you at all what other people are saying about you, because you're clear. Your self expectation, your self acceptance, your understanding of who you are and what's important to you is incredibly motivating. And it can help boost your self esteem a lot.
Correct. Now let's talk about there is a difference between self worth and self esteem. As I say often, English is a stupid language. Therefore, the words all start to sound the same, but they actually do mean different things, even though they're closely intertwined. So, self worth is really about like the deep feelings that you have about your own personal value, right? Like what you bring to the table, who you are as a person, all of those things. Um, and it's really about recognizing that you're worthy of love, respect, consideration, aside from anything you achieve outside of yourself, right? Or your achievements or any kind of external factors. This is just your worthiness because you are alive and a human being.
Created by God.
Created in the image of God and the likeness of God, if you believe in that sort of thing. Or the universe or whatever, but that's what we believe around here. So self-esteem, so that is about how you feel you are worthy inherently, period. Self-esteem, or as Cat Williams like to say, esteem of yourself,
Of your
of your mother trucker self.
former
Refers
president self.
former president self refers to how you feel about yourself in specific areas, right? So, am I intelligent? Do I have a great personality? What do I look like, appearance wise? Success. It's a little bit more fluid, and it can be influenced by external factors and your experiences. So, one is very much internal worthiness, and the other one is still internal, but it's based on things that happen outside of you, right? So yeah, those are the very simple distinctions between those two.
And so having a sense of self-worth and self-esteem is really crucial for our mental health and our well-being because it impacts everything we do from our friendships to our family relationships. Excuse me, I don't have my cup to drink. Um, People with positive self-worth are have greater confidence, they're more resilient, they're better equipped to set healthy boundaries and maintain positive relationships. All right. And then people with low self-worth and low self-esteem can that leads to that negative self-talk in your head, which makes it difficult for you to connect with people.
Fact.
It
Because
makes
you're
it
always in your head.
you're always in your head. Makes it difficult to accept compliments. Somebody can be telling you you look amazing, you look great. That negative thing in you is saying they're just saying that. They don't really mean it. Whatever your negative self-talk is, it starts up when you have low self-esteem, right? So we don't want you to have that because we want you to be well and we want you to stop focusing on your weakness and start focusing on your strengths, your God given strengths.
Which is a skill and a talent because,
It's all work.
everything around you will try to convince you that you're not as great as you are, and that's on purpose. Some people want to take advantage of you. Some people want to make money off of your weaknesses. Like the reason we buy toothpaste and deodorant and everything else is because you don't want to look and smell bad talking to people. So everything is always like pre-programmed to make you fearful of something or fearful of I'm not enough. I gotta be enough. I gotta do more. We buy makeup because of that. You know what I mean?
Bath
Like
and
there's
Body
a
Works
whole
would be out of business if we weren't
and
concerned.
not to say you can't do makeup and highlight your, accent, what's already beautiful. But a lot of that is psychology in terms of advertising is rooted in you. I gotta poke at your self-esteem in order for you to buy this product from me. You know what I'm saying?
Where's your pain point?
And where's your pain point? Once I identify that, then I can exploit it. Then I start to make the dollars. You know what I'm saying?
So we want
You
to identify your pain
be
point
aware
and get well. And
as your
so
own star player before they
then you can
start
buy whatever you want, but for
taking
the
it
right
back.
reason.
But
Right?
at least you know why. Like, oh, I do need this. Not
Yeah.
because if I don't have it, I feel incomplete or insecure or less of a person if I don't have the thing, right? You can do it, just it's gotta come from the right place.
All right, so quickly, let's talk about how past experiences play a crucial role in self expectations. We've done a lot of talk about this in previous episodes.
Go back.
So go back, just scroll through, and you can see where we talked about it. But self expectations don't just come out of thin air; they come from somewhere. So they're shaped by various factors throughout our life. Most of them start in childhood.
As we always say.
Um, from things people said to you, family members, parents, teachers, friends, that the things that you heard, your environment when you were young, help to shape your core beliefs, your values, and that's kind of where this self acceptance, self worth, self expectations is based in those things. So you have to be careful of the messages that you receive from others, especially those you value. That will shatter your expectations and your self-worth. If somebody you really value and you look up to and you think they're riding for you and they turn around and say some things that you were like, whoa. Your expectation was different for that person. You expected them to be a certain way. And we talked about that a lot last week about when you expect your leaders, but that also applies to people you're in relationship with. If you expect them to behave a certain way, to treat you a certain way, and then they don't, that then internalizes for a lot of people as to, well, then what's wrong with me, not what's wrong with them, which, you know, you can think about it that way. I hate to say it, but I do. I'm kind of like, what is wrong with that person? Because I'm a nice person. I'm a good person. So something must be
Well,
going
you're
on in
always
their
going to be
life.
the hero in your own story, but people have
Exactly.
their own stuff. So,
But my self expectations, my self awareness, my things tend, for the most part, to make me not waver a whole lot with the situations and circumstances. But that's where it starts. Those childhood experiences, those things you've heard and said, parental expectations. Listen, I read a stat today that said parental expectations have increased significantly over the last decade, especially since the 80s. I don't know what happened in the 80s,
everybody was doing cocaine in the 80s. That's what
but
happened.
parents started expecting
Hyper
children to
speed.
do more, be more, go to all the things, be in all the things. And yes, high expectations are motivating, but then high expectations can also lead to perfectionism, performance anxiety if
Mhm.
they're perceived as excessive. And I think we've seen this on the national stage with these gymnasts. Simone Biles, Naomi,
Oh, yeah.
all those are
She's a tennis player.
on the I mean in sports in general. But
Because that is a lot of high pressure.
that's a lot
Y'all
of
like
pressure.
to y'all like to talk a lot about the at the Olympics about like I could stick the landing. You ain't never tumbled, jumped, did a gymnastics class in your life, so you don't know just the pressure you have to put mentally to be able to go out there
Yeah.
to perform. You know when you're at your best, even if the world thinks you're at your best, and then just all the pressure because people always gonna have something to say. So I applaud Naomi Osaka, Simone Biles, people who are the best in the world at what they do. Okay, and decide to take a step back because it was better for their mental and emotional health.
And that started in childhood. If you look at them, of course, they've been doing this all their lives.
All their lives.
So
Serena,
the pressure of it,
Beyonce.
again, making our point about a lot of these expectations and values and beliefs that you put on yourself start in childhood, and you don't have to be in sports for that to be the case. I'm a preacher's kid, so there were a lot of expectations that were put on me as a part of that. Whatever your life circumstances are, some stuff came with it, all right, from your family, from your surroundings, from your school, from your teachers, from your life. Went to work, your first job, you know, you made a mistake on your first job and now you're fearful or whatever.
Every day. I'm getting fired today.
So, yeah, all of those things somehow get inside of us and make us doubt ourselves. And we really have to talk ourselves, like I like to say, off the ledge about
And
that.
then, of course, you add in our cultural expectations, our societal expectations. All those have an impact on our self expectations. Whether that's you supposed to be married and have kids by this age, why are you still single? Why haven't you moved and transitioned into your job? Like whatever your things is, right? And that can really affect our self esteem, um, because we want to fulfill those expectations societally, culturally. We don't want to look like we're wasting our lives, right? Or that we don't value these things, right? But you got to know who made you and who you are, right? Because the timetable for the society may not be the timetable for you. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you got to put in a whole nother factor, right? When we talk about we're Americans, so we're only talking from the Black American perspective. When you talk about dominant values, usually comes from the dominant culture. Even though they're the minority, they like to call us the minority. I say we're the minority majority. Okay, they're dwindling. Don't be confused by all this Project 2025 and all that. They're dwindling. Okay. So saying all that to say, we have been made to feel like white culture is a dominant culture. And so um, a lot of times some of our self-esteem issues come from us being Black American, or sometimes it comes from our own people, right? Of being like, you're not Black enough, whatever that means. Or we can't just go to Africa and everybody be like, oh my God, we're so happy you're home. We don't know where we come from. You know what I'm saying? So there's a whole other layer of self-worth and self-esteem that needs to be reclaimed. And I'm not talking about immigrant groups because y'all got somewhere to go. You know what I'm saying? And y'all got your own barriers in terms of coming over here and learning the language and, people who may not have had family members that were documented, undocumented at first, and then they became citizens, all that stuff. But I'm talking about from the Black American experience, just reclaiming our identity as, are we African? We're African and American. What does that mean? Like we have no connection to Africa, and yet we are very much American and part of a society that did not want us, like bought us here to build things and then discarded us. So
And we see that all across our people.
Period.
You see people who are
they're great assimilationists, right?
Or super duper duper black,
Or in all the worst ways we talk about.
Yeah. So
like I was robbing houses. My family went to prison. We all got like in all the negative ways that like they have told us as Black Americans that makes us blacker. You know what I'm saying? Even though I feel like all of those, some of those are traumatic, and you can go back to the February episodes and hear about our journey in this country, right? But some of it is a lot of those expectations come from a gaze that is not our own, and a gaze that is not, and I mean gaze by eyes, right? These are other people putting projections based on those systemic systems, traumas, and histories telling us who we should be and how we should act.
And how you take it in and what you do about it is part of this, what we're talking
reclaiming
about.
your worth.
Self-worth, your self-esteem.
Reclaiming your self-esteem.
You know, we all met those black people that everything is Africa all the time. We got to go.
Pan-Africanism.
Yeah. So
Garveyites.
Yeah, it's we are a hodgepodge mix within our own race of different ways that we
get your self-worth,
establish our self-worth and our self-esteem.
So yes, past experiences, ones you actually experienced or historic ones, definitely shape our expectations. And over time, our minds have like certain patterns that they frame based on those experiences. So I think we talked about that in the first episode of this month. But these patterns, once they're established, they guide our actions, our reactions, and they influence what we sort of expect from ourselves in different types of situations based on the life experiences that we've had or these sort of outside influences, whether that's history, other people's opinions, societal expectations, all of those things. So it's important to recognize that those expectations of these experiences, whether the experiences themselves, are 100% what you remember, or maybe a little skewed because they could be skewed by those things as well. But they all have a significant
that's
impact
really,
on our
really important.
Expectations.
What really happened may not be what you remember at all.
But it's what you remember. So that's what you cling on to. But
that's the reason I love Eve's Bayou. If you've never seen Eve's Bayou, that's a great
collection of memories.
Collection of memories. But what we remember
and what it was
could be two different things. Often two different things, and we are reacting and basing our values and our beliefs on what we remember, not what really actually happened, which is why we stress generational wellness, because sometimes it is important to go back in your family and say to whoever or all the people and say, this is what I remember, and this has impacted my life in a particular way. Is this true? Did this happen? Which is why it's so important not to keep secrets in families, and as not just Black families, but families that have traumatic experiences need to be able to
generationally too. Like it keeps happening or it keeps showing up.
Yeah, you need to be able to talk about that and help heal those children, the children that are coming up. But if nobody ever talks about it and nobody ever wants to share what really happened, and then the people who have the memories, you may be the ones that have to take the step, because the people back there are not going to say, well, this is what happened. You have to be that change agent and start that dynamic in your family of, we're going to tell the truth. We're going to ask the hard questions. We're going to talk about this so that we can all get well.
I can think of an example that's not ours, but I remember, if you haven't read Viola Davis's memoir or listened to it on Audible like I did, shameless plug, go ahead and do it. I think it's called Finding Myself. But I remember if you know anything about her story, just, loosely, but had a very traumatic childhood, grew up in poverty in Rhode Island, faced a lot of racism, always didn't have food to eat, really was living in like squalor, right? Like just ruin. She always felt like her birth was like a burden on her parents. Like, so she, based on her life circumstances after her birth, she was telling herself this story that nobody was excited that she was born. Like that her birth story was just something crazy that she had made up that wasn't true.
Yeah.
And she remembers talking to her mom about it. And her mom was like, what are you talking about? Everybody was super happy when you were born. She was born on the sharecropping land that her family worked. And she was technically born on a plantation and in this very little shack. And she was like, everybody was so happy you're here. We had sardine sandwiches and this, that, and the third. And everybody was so happy. And she was like, huh? Like, based on my experiences, I felt like I was a burden. You all didn't want me. You didn't, I was a stressor on the family. And they're like, we're so happy you're here. And that completely reframed her birth story, the birth narrative that she had been telling herself for 30, 40 years. Like that just recently happened for her. Mm-hmm. So all of our self expectations, can sometimes be unrealistic, right, or harmful. And a common occurrences for that, right, or things sometimes that people think, these are just general things. Viola Davis was telling herself a crazy birth story, okay? But some of us are doing less complicated things, like thinking we should be perfect in school or perfect at work or everywhere, okay? Impossible. Believing everybody must like us at all times. That's impossible. And then for the married people or people in relationships, assuming that marriage should always be easy. This relationship should be easier. Things shouldn't be as hard. And these types of expectations um, really kind of assume that we have a certain level of control that we don't have, which I feel like we talk about all the time. That's a lot of our problems. We feel like we really got it like that, and we really don't. We didn't wake ourselves up this morning. We didn't start ourselves on our way, as the saints say. But we be like, we got it. We can hustle up on it. So we actually don't have any control over situations, other people's feelings. We really are just responsible for ourselves. So saying things like, I should always be happy, or my partner should always know what I'm thinking, without me telling them, like that's very unrealistic. No one's gonna do that. Okay. Also, these are just kind of signs of like, if you feeling these things, you probably have unrealistic expectations. So you feel constantly stressed when things don't go exactly as planned. I used to be a person that was like that, and I had to let it go. It's too stressful because nothing is gonna go as you plan. And as a person who worked in production for many years, we planned to have things go as planned, and they still didn't go as planned. So you just gotta go with the flow. Okay. If you find yourself frequently criticizing yourself or other people, probably setting some unrealistic expectations. And if they turn the finger back towards you, that would be a problem. Fixating on small details and feeling deeply frustrated by like minor setbacks, small things, but they're also indicators, unrealistic expectations. Um, or you may have like a very specific vision for things. I am a person who that is very true. And how things should unfold, right? And if there's any sort of alternative, which is going to happen, you be in your feelings and feeling some type of way. So we're not saying acting something. We're not saying don't have expectations. We're just saying make sure they're not unrealistic. So if any of those things resonate with things don't go as planned, you're easily frustrated by small things, you have a specific vision, if it's a little off kilter, if you fixate on the small details, you want to blow up everything and fight everybody. That's not great for your mental health, your emotional awareness, your self-worth, or your self-esteem. All right. So how do these expectations affect these unrealistic expectations affect your self-esteem and mental health? Well, when you set these impossibly high standards for yourself, you end up feeling disappointment when it doesn't happen that way. And then you start to feel inadequate, like, yes, I'm a horrible person. I can't do this. I'm not smart enough. I'm not whatever. When actually, it's just that the expectation you had was not even realistic to begin with. You started. And so now you have a cycle of, I didn't do this. I'm so horrible. I'm so bad. The negative self-talk comes in. Your self-worth gets lowered. And then, let's not even talk about the people that struggle with that perfectionism issue, because if you do that, you are setting your standards far beyond what's even possible for you, per way you can reach it. Human beings are imperfect. You just, you 4 foot tall and you want to shoot, play basketball with unless you got, some of y'all, the short people, some of y'all can really ball, but then you're like, oh no, I couldn't make that basket, or whatever, and you're, well, just an example. So, but if you start to do that over and over again in your life, you have a pattern of perfectionism. Nothing is ever good enough. You set the bar so high all the time. It causes a barrier to success because you don't want to do anything because it's not ever going to be good enough.
So it starts anxiety and procrastination. You can't do this because it's not perfect. You can't move forward because it's not perfect. And that's from the overthinking in your mind and you setting unrealistic expectations for yourself and probably for everybody around you and getting on their turn.
Definitely for everyone else.
You know, I used to have that really bad around Christmas. I am much better, but I had an expectation. My Christmases when I was growing up were amazing. They were beautiful. My mom, decorated the trees and this and the house all had decorations from top to bottom. So my expectation was that that would be important to everybody else in my family. Love them to death, but it's not. So that was an unrealistic expectation for me that was causing me anxiety, them anxiety, stress, depression, whatever.
Mainly her anxiety, stress, and depression.
Yeah,
It was
because they
fine.
didn't care. But then I would be mad too on top of that. So get rid of it if you can. Do all you can to get
We're
rid
gonna
of
give you
that
tips. We're not gonna leave you alone.
perfectionism monster. It doesn't lead to better outcomes and it just winds up chipping away at your self-esteem and reinforcing those negative beliefs that you have about yourself because it focuses on the outcome, on the end thing. It doesn't think about the process or the learning that goes along with whatever journey you're on. You just want to get to the end and it should look like this and if it doesn't, but what are you learning along the way? What can you be flexible about? What can you adjust to? We at the conference this morning and they said nothing is going the way, nothing, we're not doing anything that we originally planned to do. Everything had to be changed, had to be flexible. So again, you can either be curled up
Fight
in a
that.
ball and crying because everything didn't go the way you had it in your mind to go, or you can learn to move past it, learn what things are helpful to help you manage those unrealistic expectations. Um, Fear of failure. A lot of people struggle with that. Um, that can also prevent you from taking risks or trying new things. And then it becomes self fulfilling, which I hate when that happens. Like you tell it to yourself so often that you start to believe it and then you start to do it when you could easily tell yourself the other thing and start to do that instead of the negative thing that you keep talking about. Imposter syndrome, you feel like a fraud despite whatever you achieved already. You can't see it, you can hear it. It's kind of like, you know how they say people have body dysmorphia, where they're really, really thin when they have
not in their mind.
but in their mind they see themselves as overweight, so they don't want to eat or whatever. Or the opposite, people who are overweight see themselves as really thin, or people who are really smart think that they're not smart enough. There's just all these ways that we have this body.
You're not measuring
intellectual.
You always feel like you never hitting the bar.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So
even if you are hitting the bar,
even if you've done things 1,000,
you being successful, like people are like, not that you need everybody's validation, but you could really be killing it and still feel like I'm a fraud.
You miss opportunities. You miss opportunities to help people because you don't believe like your expertise and the things that you know are really valuable. I have that sometimes where I think everybody knows what I know. And then my therapist always tells me, no,
and me. I'll be like, girl, don't nobody know that.
Does not know that. Yeah, people don't know that. So um, lean into where you're being afraid, where you're afraid of failing, where you think that what you have is not valuable. All right.
Sorry, text messages. All right, let's talk about negative self-talk and beliefs real quick. So we all have moments where we have thoughts that sort of take a negative turn. This is something I struggled with for a long time and continue to struggle with. That ain't completely done. But it's important to know that you have control over those thoughts. Like they could come, but they ain't gotta stay. Okay, that's really the thing. I'm not gonna be like, I never. That's not true. So negative self-talk is sort of like the bully that comes to your mind to tell you like you're not nothing, you messed up. Like it's sort of the thing, perfectionism. It's all really like the same voice. It just be taking on like
shape shifting.
Think of like perfectionism. What was the one we just said before that? Like perfectionism, fear of failure. It's all the same voice. They just be putting on different outfits when they come to you. Like they just be presenting you a different style, but it's all the same thing. So it's the bully that comes to your mind that just reminds you of your flaws, your mistakes, like makes you feel like a failure. And like if you can learn to identify and challenge the thoughts that are unhelpful. Sometimes, they be helping you get back on your square. So you're like, okay, that's a good thought. Sometimes, but when it starts tearing down your self-esteem, your self-worth, messing up your overall mental health, that's bad. So the first step in overcoming negative self-talk is to realize that you're experiencing negative self-talk. Like if you don't acknowledge it, address it, be like, these thoughts are not good, noble, high thinking thoughts. Then you got to pay attention to that. Okay. And it's not that they're not going to pop into your mind throughout the day. They are, but
Yep.
you got to be like, interrogate them. Is this helpful? Is it criticizing?
Yep.
Am I expecting the worst? Like, what are these things?
Yep.
So once you see these patterns of thinking, then you could kind of like course correct, right? But they also can significantly impact your self-worth and your confidence if they're not checked. So common forms of this, right? Filtering out all of your positive experiences, like everything is always bad, even though it's good. Like you might have some good moments, but it's just always crazy. Personalizing events, like this always happens to me. I'm always experiencing this. It could be something common to man, but you just feel like it's always
Your flight's delayed at the airport. They did this to me.
in the middle of Delta's freak out, right?
Yeah.
And catastrophizing situations, right? So everything is it's a catastrophe. It's catastrophic, as Riley from the Boondocks would say, right? Everything is a catastrophe. So those are some things to keep in mind. But let's talk about how we develop actual healthy self expectations. Okay, so this is setting realistic goals is probably one of the most crucial, most important things in your life because it will stop a lot of mental and emotional stress for you if you can reel yourself in, take a step back, and be like, "Whoop, you're doing too much. Let's reel it back and let's reassess." Okay, because when we set achievable objectives, goals, think of ourselves in realistic forms and fashions, we experience a lot of success and we get to boost our self-esteem. So you want to start with considering just the starting point. Point one, just be quiet, get away from some people, and start to consider like what you want for yourself and what you want for your life, right? You have to see it before you can be it, okay? You got to imagine it. So once you start building those self expectations, then those become aspirational. Once you're like, oh, I really care about this, or I care about that, or like, I don't even care about that at all. Why was I doing that? And you realize, oh, because my mom cares about that, or my dad, or my cousins, or I got bullied in the fifth grade about that, but I'm 45 now. Like, girl, move on. You know what I'm saying? But if you never take time to look at those things and assess those things, you still gonna be lost in the sauce. So the honesty is important and helps you to be realistic and accomplishing whatever you need to accomplish, fixing whatever you need to fix on a daily basis. If you're a perfectionist, we already said that's focused on outcomes, not the process of growth and opportunity and who you become along the journey. Just like, I want to hit the target, hit the target. And some days you might not hit the target, boo. Okay. Humans are not perfect. So we recommend, experts recommend, just try to adopt is good enough. Okay. I know. Even saying that sounds like good enough, bruh. But me, I know. But good enough, right? It's a standard of I did my best. I put my best foot forward.
Yeah.
Because you ain't gonna attain no perfectionism. This is coming from a recovering perfectionist, so I get it. Okay. But once you're doing that, that allows you to focus on the positive aspects of your efforts. What did you do? You can set more modest goals because you actually are dealing with the realisticness of what you can actually do in a day, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Some of y'all be trying to cram 9,200 things into a 24-hour day. Okay.
As a recovering workaholic, I can speak to that.
After the pandemic, we had 3 things a day. Remember, I keep saying it. 1, 2, 3. 3 is the max. If you're doing 2, if you're doing 1, if you're doing 1.5, boo, you on it. Okay. Because reducing perfectionism, it allows you to not have all these high standards and be driving yourself crazy. It helps you find healthy balance between ambition and self-acceptance. There's nothing wrong with being ambitious, but you got to accept yourself and what level of ambition you can get to today.
Listen, I used to have a to-do list. That was a daily to-do list that has now turned into my weekly to-do list. And it has relieved so much stress for me to say, I need to get this done sometime this week. Not today. But this week, if I can get it, and let me tell you something, when I get to the end of the week, I still might have two or three things that I didn't do, but I can look back and say, I did this, and I can lay down at night and go, I did the three things I said I was going to do today, and hey, I'm good with that.
And that is part of practicing self-compassion, which
Absolutely.
is our next step. So this is just, it's real basic. Just be nice to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Big yourself up for what you're doing, that you're striving, that you're doing things. Maybe you're taking a couple steps back. Maybe you invest in a little more self-care. Like, you're just giving yourself grace, okay? Forgiveness. You're doing it for yourself, therefore you can do it for others. You can accept your flaws. You can show yourself kindness. You can open up space for positive changes for yourself and for others. Because self compassion really helps you bounce back from said inevitable setbacks. I almost said freak offs, but I got me. Setbacks. And it no freak offs. But it helps you to not be going through depression, anxiety, all of those things, because you are accepting yourself where you are, the motivation of your goals and whatever you got going on. Okay, this type of maturing in self growth, self compassion, self love is part of a growth mindset, right? So that sees failure as opportunity, not as failure. Kaput, ill, gross. I'm the worst. It's just part of your learning experience. That's what we were talking about in terms of why perfectionism is bad, because you don't get to see the growth and the process and all that it takes. Like, we've all seen babies. They didn't come out here knowing how to walk. They had to go through the process of walking. If they was beating themselves up about knowing how to walk, they would never walk. There's the process of, oh, I got feet. Oh, I got legs. Oh, I can put pressure on these legs. Oh, I can't put that much pressure on. Like, you have to go through the stages of figuring the things out, right? So the growth mindset just helps you bounce back from your perceived failures, right? It's not failure if you're looking at it as, okay, I didn't quite hit the target there, but I grew. I learned.
And I learned what not to do.
Right? Um, because successful people are willing to hit rock bottom and start over. Mm-hmm. Unless they've done things illegally that will end up in jail. Yeah. But we praying for a start over for you too. But you got to admit that you was messing up. Child. Anyway, you want to challenge your negative self-talk and your irrational beliefs, right? We were talking about that earlier. And you really do that very simply by asking yourself questions. Is there real evidence to support this or no? My therapist often does this to me, where I'll be going off about something and Tremaine be like, but let's check the resume, let's check the stats, like, let's look at the board, okay? Is there evidence to support that? And then once I look at it, I'm like, yeah, there is, or no, there's actually not. I'm tripping, right? So to have somebody call you out on that until you can do it for yourself, it's good. Are you jumping to conclusions? Are you overgeneralizing? Right? A lot of negative thoughts are based on your feelings and not actual facts. Okay, your feelings hurt your feelings and not actual facts. So sometimes you gotta bring in some outside help to help you stick to the facts, boo. As they was telling all them people as they was interrogating them at Project 2025. Shout out to Ian Presley and Jasmine Crockett. Are we sticking to the facts of what's in there? Okay. And so once you're able to sort of interrogate, examine, and find evidence, actual evidence, you can consider alternative perspectives. You can start to break down some of these irrational beliefs, things that you come to think about your self-esteem, figure out where things are coming from, get that going. Reframing your negative thoughts, right? Instead of saying, oh my God, I'm a total failure, you might say, you know what? I made a mistake. I can learn from that. I have to do this often. Like, I had to do it a couple times on the trip where I was like, why are you tripping about that, dog? Like, it wasn't that big of a deal, but it feels like a big deal to me. So a lot of this, yeah, a lot of this is, you got to Jedi mind trick yourself out of negative self-talk. Like, once it starts, because it'll come fast and furious, and then it'll be all nitrous oxide going super fast all in your mind. You got like, pause, pause, pause. Like, let's just get back to
and put some positive in it, because it takes 5 positive statements, affirmations, thoughts, whatever, to cancel out one negative thought. So if you start having negative thoughts, you gotta pour into yourself, real quick, real fast, and a lot, not just one thing. You gotta say all the things.
So this shift in perspective definitely boosts your self-worth and hopefully your self-esteem, because you'll have a more positive self-image. And then you gotta this one is hard. This takes some excavating, because you might have some hidden expectations that you need to uncover, right? So there's all kind of like, within all the spots we named, right? Intelligence, appearance, self-worth, self all these things, right? You actually might be feeling disappointment, regret or anger in any one of those spaces, right? So not only is it like you got to be self-aware, you got to do like a couple layers deeper self-awareness to be like, you might just think of something on like a surface level and then realize, oh, I got extra feelings about that underneath. And if you have extra feelings about that underneath that are rooted in facts
that you have pushed
that you have pushed down,
way down.
These emotions may have stemmed from the gap, okay, between your hidden expectations and your current reality, right? So this is what we refer to, I learned this term, cognitive dissonance in college, right? Where we have like a cognitive reaction to like how we think things are gonna go versus how they're actually going. And it causes a little bit of like disturbance in our brain until we're able to settle into like, oh, this is actually what's going on. Do I like it? Do I not? Do I want to change it? Right? Then you start doing the action steps. But if you never acknowledge that, or you just get stuck in like
for
everything is not
years
the way that I think it would be, then you'll be stuck, and nobody has time for that. Okay, but we got things to do.
Other things to consider: evaluate if your expectations are helping or hurting you. Sometimes you can be going through things and you think, I'm really doing a good job at this or whatever, but it might not really be beneficial.
It might be more hurtful for you than
to your growth.
You
So,
tricking yourself.
Yep. So once you've identified your expectations, look at, are they providing clarity? Are they providing direction? Are they providing accountability? Is all that part of what you expect for your life? And are you putting things in place to help you do that?
Correct.
If you don't, you're going to still be
frustrated,
making up things and having expectations that don't make no sense to nobody. If you were to say them out loud to somebody, they would
that wouldn't make sense to you.
That you say, wait, what did I
if
know
you,
I
you talking to you, you'd be like, that don't make no sense.
I don't know if that makes sense. Or this is my favorite, all or nothing thinking. One thing can go wrong and then it's the end of the world. It's like, oh, I didn't get an A on my exam. I'm gonna flunk out of school. I'm never gonna get a job.
You hear how unrealistic that sounds?
Nobody's ever gonna hire me because I didn't get an A on this one exam. That's all or nothing thinking, where you just one thing goes wrong and you like stack more stuff on it. That's what can lead to perfectionism and unrealistic standards, and you can't appreciate the good things that do come. Shoulds and musts. I should do this. I must do that. I should do this. I must do that. Baby boomers are really bad at that because we grew up in the 50s and 60s and there were so many rules and things. Again, going back to our February episodes, a lot of was to keep us safe, but
and close to whiteness too.
And it's just hard. So look at your should list. When you find yourself, oh, I should.
It could be unrealistic.
It might be unrealistic. Right. You really might need to pay your light bill, but you might not need to go 12 places in one day because you promised somebody you were going to pick up all the pink polka dot dresses for the tea or the baby.
That is I didn't know where that example was going, but that's an example of it. Overextending yourself when you should have prioritized.
Unrealistic.
You should have prioritized what was most important to you and then told them people that would be great. I would love to help you with that, but this is actually more important. And see how you taking care of yourself, valuing your own self-worth and your own self-esteem. And if they mad at you for it, they'll get over it, boo. But you have to be on your own square.
Yeah. Okay. Stop comparing yourself to other. I know this is hard in our day and age. We live in a comparison
generation.
It's there all the time in front of you, but you just have to stop. If that means you can't look at social media without getting depressed because you wasn't on the yacht this weekend or you didn't, go to Turks Caicos last week or whatever it is. If all you looking at that all the time is gonna make you feel bad about yourself, just stop doing it. You don't have to. Remember, I know a lot of you cannot remember, but we used to not have social media.
No, a lot of y'all don't remember, but it was.
You didn't know somebody was spending, $50,000 on a Sweet 16 party. You just didn't know. So, unrealistic expectations can also hinder your ability to just accept who you are. Again, that is back to the comparison. You ain't got to be like everybody else. You don't need.
You actually are not supposed to be like everybody else. You're supposed
God made us all to be unique and make up.
And that's have you ever questioned the nature of your own reality of it all? Why are you out here trying to be like 2,500 other women? Then we already have those people. We don't have you
Be
though.
you, boo.
Be you, boo.
All right. Let's see. What else do we want to talk about? So accept yourself,
Period.
recognize and embrace what makes your life fulfilling. Go with that. Don't be trying to be nobody else. Take the talents and the gift God gave you, use them, and it will stop all them crazy voices in your head.
Crazy voices.
All right.
Your head. All right. So wrapping up. Listen, setting realistic expectations is very, very closely tied, okay, to our self-worth, right? Which is how we feel about ourselves on the inside, our value, our worthiness based on just our inherent being, right? Our love, our respect, all of that. Our self-esteem is how we feel about our former president selves um, in relation to different facets of our life, our intellect, our appearance, our so our this, that, and the third. Okay. Both are inside. Some things are just pure internal, and some things are internal, giving being thrown back to you based on your external factors. Okay. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, fostering healthy self-esteem is super, super important because setting unreasonably high, because I was gonna say unrealistic and it was lunching all together. Unrealistic expectations definitely can lead to negative effects on your self-esteem and also your self-worth. Because if your esteem is bad about your job, your appearance, your this, your that, your that, that's automatically gonna tear down your self-worth because you're just gonna feel like nothing. And that ain't the goal. Okay. When you fail to meet any of your goals, right, or said goal that you feel like is more important, because we all have our own hierarchy scale of goals. Okay. Um, that can result in a lot of personal disappointment and also some disappointment for other people, but they ain't gonna die and neither are you. Okay.
But set a realistic goal in the first place. Like, don't tell people you're gonna do stuff that you know you
Stop
ain't gonna do.
overextending yourself to things that you know you're not gonna do.
But
But that's about people pleasing, right? Which is rooted in perfectionism, is all in that thing of
it's like, no, I don't think I can want to do that.
because you think you can prove your worth and your value by doing a lot of activities.
Exactly.
And nobody really cares about the activity. It's probably something they didn't want to do, so now they're trying to make you have a complex and not doing it. Throw it back in their face, boo. Be like, I'm so sorry, I can't do that. Okay.
Self worth is based on who you are, not what you do.
Okay.
All right.
So,
not what you do.
yeah, just don't undermine people's trust in you by overcommitting. Okay, stick to the commitments you want to commit to. Okay, stick to the things, the people. It's all about you, really. At the
I'd
end.
rather you tell me you're not gonna do it than say you're gonna do it and then don't do it. Ooh.
And then persistent low self-esteem, right? If you deal with this regularly, it does affect your mental and emotional health, um, your self-care, your motivation, your confidence, your relationships, your resilience or lack thereof, right? So you really gotta like guard that thing. Because
that's how you are.
Self-worth and self-esteem is part of the journey to creating generational wellness. Okay. So you really got to lean into your uniqueness, your unique value propositions, what you offer the world, your personal values, how you want to present, how you want to show up in the world. Cultivate your self-compassion. Find your good enough and let that be good enough. Okay. Celebrate. And celebrate that thing. Okay. Yeah. We talked a lot about celebration on previous episodes, so get into that. Continue to foster that growth mindset. It is crucial and key. And continue to challenge all the negative self-talk and the irrational beliefs by asking yourself, is this true? Is it valid? Does it even make sense? Is there evidence to support this? And if there's not, and change your expectation of yourself. Shut it down, boo. Change it. Change it. Shut it down. You need to. If you need to. We thank y'all so much for joining us. We hope this made sense. We hope you can hear us, see us, all the things, because we're running and gunning, okay, on the road. Um, we don't have a tech team. We don't have a tech team. It's very much us, team. Okay. I plug things in where she says plug. And shout out to my friends who are gonna get this whole thing together. I love y'all. Y'all know who y'all are. Anyway, with that, we got Woman Evolved to get back to. Shout out to Sarah Jakes Roberts, Pastor Torre, Bishop Jakes, Lady Sarita Jakes, Cora Jakes, Priscilla Schreier preached down today, y'all. Yes. Okay. Maybe we'll do an episode about that. Maybe we'll cut the theme and we'll just talk about this conference once we're done. But anyway, whatever we're talking about next Thursday, you're not gonna know. If you are not subscribed on the YouTube channel, follow us on IG, Facebook, fan base. We're at Create Generational Wellness on all the platforms. Again, I said this every week. We're revamping. We're doing some things. A lot of things going on behind the scenes. chats. Okay. So make
Keep
sure
watching.
you're tapped in so you can see our growth. We have a growth mindset around this podcast. So that's very hard for recovered perfectionists and people that we want things to be a certain way and we value excellence and quality. But sometimes, as Sarah said, you just gotta go with the flow. Let God do what God gonna do. Okay. So we hope y'all have a great night. We will see you next week.
Somewhere.
Peace. Somewhere.
All right.
Somewhere. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Boop. Boop. Boop.